You've saved around $1.5 million in your IRAs and 401ks. You plan to retire around age 65, and you're wondering, will your taxes be lower in retirement? Or will your taxes be higher in retirement? And today we're going to walk you through a sample case showing you that situation. We're going to talk about for the sample case, what the taxable income looks like in retirement versus today. We're going to talk about what tax rates and tax brackets look like in retirement versus today as well. Plus, we're going to talk about how to help lower your taxes in retirement. That way you can help keep more of your money with you, giving you more to spend, more to do for activities, more to do for travel, more for a legacy versus paying it out to the IRS in taxes. And stick around to the end because we're going to show you how in our sample case here they could potentially save a projected $300,000, savings of $300,000 of federal taxes paid. That's a whole lot more money in their pocket versus going to the IRS. Okay, with that, here's who we're talking about today. We've got Jeff and Sue Sample, our hypothetical couple who's age 64. As I had mentioned, they've got $1.5 million in their 401ks and IRAs, still working. So they have 401ks that they plan to roll over to IRAs. As you'll see here, they've got a $250,000 in a brokerage account. So overall, about $1.75 million in their accounts. And then as we kind of scroll down here, they do have a residence of $500,000 and no mortgage. They've got that paid off. So total net worth of $2.25 million. Now, I bring up the mortgage and just put it in there that they have it paid off. So that way, as we go into taxable income, you're not wondering if they've got mortgage interest that's factoring into things or anything like that. So totally paid off in regards to that. Now, let's look at their overall situation. So they've got the $1.5 million, but when it comes to taxes, part of what's important there is understanding what that future cash flow looks like as well. What's going to be factoring in to their taxable income. So as I mentioned, Jeff and Sue Sample here, age 64, planning to retire at age 65. You'll see here the planning horizons. We've put Jeff at age 85, Sue at age 95. And I'll point out to you when we get into the tax projections, you're going to want to pay attention to this here. A lot of times, right, we're not going to necessarily pass away at the same ages. And if we're passing away at different ages, it can actually have an impact, which we've nicknamed the widow's tax, but it can have an impact on that remaining spouse and potentially more taxes getting paid out to the IRS. So we'll show you that when we get to the tax projection. Okay, Jeff and Sue here also are looking to have a front-loaded plan. You've heard me talk about that before, where they want to enjoy more of their money up front, and you'll see that in activities and travel, versus saving it all and trying to spend the same throughout their entire retirement. They know that they're going to spend more in those go-go years than potentially in those future years. All right. Now getting into the income sources. So things that play into future taxes. One is how much they're going to need to live their lifestyle, because basically they'll have Social Security coming in, but then they'll have to go to their IRAs to make withdrawals. When they make withdrawals from those IRAs, that's all considered taxable income. So future income that they're going to have coming in their case, they've got their Social Securities. Now, I will say in the projections here, what we did is we put Jeff starting his Social Security at age 70 and Sue starting her Social Security at full retirement age. Current income sources, they each have $100,000 coming in from their job. So right now they've got $200,000 of income coming in, and they are putting into their 401ks. They're each putting 15% in their 401ks. And they do have some company matches. So the question that we're here to answer and kind of talk about is, will their taxes be lower in retirement? They're making $200,000 right now. They've got a good income coming in. Will the taxes be lower in retirement, or will the taxes be higher in retirement? And the fact that they've got $1.5 million saved into those IRAs and 401ks, it's important to remember none of that money has been taxed yet. So every dollar that comes out is going to be taxable income. Also, starting in their 70s, they're going to have to start doing required minimum distributions. That's the forced income that the government's going to force them to take out. And so will that potentially raise them up into higher taxes in their future versus where they're at today? A few things just to note here. We did have their, in the projections, we put them at 70% equities, 30% fixed income. And as I had showed you, they're right now contributing to their 401ks. So something that we're going to look at when we get to the tax projections is the 401k the right spot to be putting the money, or should they be doing something different? And we're going to talk about that in the tax projections, and as I show you some of the potential savings, it looks like in their case, maybe they should be doing something different. Now, I find that a lot of people are making decisions on where to put their money, which account type to use, or doing Roth conversion without even knowing what their future taxable income might be. Now, working with a lot of people just like you that are approaching retirement or in retirement, we're going to focus on 3 things to help you understand what are the proper things that you should be doing to help reduce your future taxable income. And those 3 things are: 1, what's your future taxable income look like? 2, what tax brackets will you be in? And 3, then implementing the right strategies to help reduce your overall taxes. So let's start with the first one, which is understanding what will your future taxable income look like. Now, for our sample case here, Jeff and Sue sample, the first thing we're going to look at is their future taxable income. That is the blue. That's the highlighted blue in this area. Now, future taxable income versus today's taxable income. What do they have coming in today? Well, as we had went through there, we showed that they each have $100,000 of employment income coming in. So they've got that coming in, minus what they're putting into their 401ks, minus any sort of standard deduction. So if we look at the left-hand side right here, we would show that they've, and again, it's all estimates, but they've got about $145,000 of taxable income. Now, for you, you would want to put in your specific situation and scenario into this overall projection. Now, as you'll see, once they retire age 65, that's where their taxable income goes to 0. And you might be thinking, wait a second, they had that lifestyle that they wanted to live. They wanted to give to charity. They wanted to gift to their children. They wanted to do travel and activities. And I had mentioned earlier that brokerage account. That brokerage account actually brings a very unique thing to their tax situation. They'd be able to live off of that brokerage account for a couple years, keeping their tax rates really low. That also helps them in their tax situation, because that might be an area then where they might want to consider doing Roth conversions. Okay, back to our taxable income here. So then in retirement, once they start taking Social Security and they have to start making withdrawals from their IRAs and 401ks, there are now other things that they need to factor into their taxable income. So in their situation, they'd be factoring in IRA withdrawals, they'd be factoring in Social Security, plus they'd be factoring in any sort of dividends and interest from savings accounts and bank accounts. So they'd have all of those things coming in, minus what they're getting for any sort of standard deduction or itemized deduction. That's going to be their taxable income in retirement. Now, for you, in your situation, you have to think about, what do you have coming in? Maybe you've got rental income coming in. Maybe you've got a pension income coming in. Maybe you've just got other consulting or part-time income coming in. You need to look at your specific situation. But for Jeff and Sue sample here, so we can see, okay, while they're working, remember, $200,000 of income coming in, but they had 401k contributions as well as standard deduction. So they're about $145,000 of income. We look at this. Okay, now as they get into retirement, age 67 here, age 68, well, they're actually less than what their taxable income was pre-retirement. But as we continue to go along here, and then all of a sudden they're going to hit their age of required minimum distributions, age 73. And you'll see here, things kind of just start to continue to go up over time. And a big portion of that is because in time, your required minimum distributions become a bigger and bigger portion of your IRA value. It's all based on a lifetime table. And so if you're getting some sort of growth in your IRA, and you have to take the required minimum distributions, as you can see here in this projection for Jeff and Sue's sample, next thing you know is that their taxable income could be potentially higher in retirement than where they're at today. If we look in their 80s here, just one little snapshot, $241,000 of taxable income versus where they're at today. So that's, again, point one, what is their taxable income in the future versus where they're at today? Now, the other thing that would then want to take this and look at to say, okay, now will their taxes actually be higher or lower in the future, is which tax brackets will they fall in? And so as you can see in this chart, this is now project using that taxable income, which tax rates will they be paying, which tax bracket will they fall in? Now, all of the income doesn't get taxed at this tax bracket, but it's helpful to know where some of their top income and what rate that top income will be getting taxed at. And so as you can see here, today, they, for their taxable income, are in the 22% bracket. That would drop once they retire. They're going to be in the 10% bracket. And then once they start kicking in Social Security, the brokerage account goes down. They're starting to take more money out of their IRAs. Next thing you know is they're in the 25% bracket. And you'll say, wait a second, 22 to 25, why might that be? I haven't heard of the 25% bracket because right now it's 22 and 24. Well, at this point in time, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is scheduled to expire the end of 2025. If that expires as it's scheduled to do, then the 22% bracket we're projecting would become the 25% bracket. The 24% bracket would become the 28% bracket. So as you can see, they would actually be going up in tax rates in their retirement, again, for that highest bracket of taxable income. The other thing that I mentioned when we were going through their cash flow was, what if Jeff passed away at age 85? And you'll see here in our projections a jump right there at age 85. It jumps from the 25% bracket to the 28% bracket. Why is that? Well, a single making the same amount of income as a couple typically gets taxed at a higher rate. So Jeff passes away. Sue then, in future years, she's going to be taxed as a single versus a couple. Now that she's a single, she still has to take out the required minimum distributions for their entire accounts, both hers and Jeff's. So now she's taking out all those required minimum distributions as a single. Basically, what's happened here is now she's got the same amount of income coming in, but she's a single versus a couple, so she's getting taxed at a higher rate. And so that's why you see the jump here. So something for couples to really be aware of, and I see this a lot, is that they're not necessarily thinking about this in their future, depending on when that first spouse passes away, this case in the 80s, but what if it would happen to be earlier? Then Sue, or even vice versa, if Sue passed away, then Jeff would be at a higher tax rate. So leaving your spouse with an IRA or a 401k is potentially leaving more money to the IRS. So we've done our first step. We projected out their projected taxable income in their future. Then we looked at their tax rates and future tax brackets. Will Jeff and Sue's tax rates be lower in retirement than where they're at today? Well, most likely not, because again, there's going to be points in time, yes, where their taxable income is lower, But as you can see in their 70s and 80s, for the most part, their taxable income and tax rates and tax brackets, as we showed in that graph, would be higher in the future versus where they're at today. We'd actually project that Jeff and Sue would pay, as you can see here, a projection, just a projection, around $1.18 million in federal taxes throughout the retirement if Jeff were to live to age 85 and Sue to live till age 95. So the third step, what can they do about it? How can they lower their taxes? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second. But for you, remember, everyone's situation is unique and different. You have to look at what's your taxable income today, and then you have to look at what will you have for taxable income in the future. What's the values of your IRAs and 401ks and the money that you'll have to take required minimum distributions from or have to pay taxes on? Will you have a pension coming in? Will you have, you'll have Social Security, pension? Are you going to have any rental income coming in? Will you have any part-time income coming in? You need to really look at your situation to factor all of these things out. And then you can start looking at what you can do to help reduce your taxable situation. So I'm going to talk about the things that you can compare and look at to help you reduce your taxable situation. And then we're going to go back to Jeff and Sue's sample here and talk about the ways that we are able to implement some strategies and how it impacted or lowered their specific situation. So if you're still working, here's the things that you want to consider and look at. Again, after step one, you've done your tax, you've projected your taxable income. Step two, you've looked at your tax rates today versus tax rates in the future. Then you want to consider, okay, should you be doing 401k versus Roth 401k or putting your money into a brokerage account? Should you be doing an IRA or should you be doing a Roth IRA? Both of those things that I was just talking about there, that's understanding, should you be paying tax today and then getting tax-free money in the future, or should you be getting a tax deduction today and paying tax in the future? Again, all depends on your projection. How about spousal IRA versus spousal Roth IRA? Which one of the two should you be considering based on your projection? Should you be considering a Roth conversion while you're still working? I've done a video on that, and I'll post a link to it in this video here, as well in this description below. One thing that will help you out, no matter what your projection looks like, is could you be putting money into an HSA? And then if you're giving to charitable causes, then should you be doing a donor advised fund or maybe considering bunching? That's if you're still working. Now, if you're retired, some of the things that you might want to consider to help lower your taxes is Roth conversion. The next thing that you might want to consider is if you're charitable, should you be doing qualified charitable distributions, a donor advised fund, or maybe again, bunching your charitable contributions. Another thing that you could consider once you're retired is just lowering the growth in your IRA. Now be careful with that. If you go too conservative, you might not have enough growth for the income that you need. But remember, getting our money growing in that IRA just means more potential required minimum distributions in your future. So the other thing you could look at is asset allocation. Maybe you've got a Roth, maybe you've got an IRA, maybe you've got a brokerage account. Where should you put your growth versus where should you put your safer assets? The other thing that you can really consider, just like Jeff and Sue sample, is maybe you want to just spend more money up front, meaning you take more withdrawals from your IRAs up front, depending on your brackets and your situation. You're then taking maybe more money out of your IRAs at lower brackets versus in the future. And then another point to consider is delaying Social Security, because Social Security adds in to your taxable income. So depending on how much income you have coming in, depends on how much of your Social Security adds into your taxable income and factors into your overall taxes. So what did we consider for Jeff and Sue's sample here? And I'm going to show you all of the things that I'm going to talk to you about all of the things that we implemented and then show you the impact that it had on their overall federal taxes paid to the IRS. So here's what we've implemented in the planning software for Jeff and Sue Sample. Now, if you remember back to the retirement story that they wanted to create, they were giving $10,000 a year to charitable organizations. So one of the things that we did is we said, okay, starting at age 70 and a half, they were going to give those donations through their IRA using the qualified charitable distribution strategy. So that was strategy number one. Second, since it did appear that their tax rates were going to be higher in retirement than where they're at today, instead of putting money into their 401k, we switched it up to put the money into their Roth 401k today. So they're going to pay tax today where we think they're at that lower rate versus in the future. The third strategy, because based on what they've saved and projecting out, it looked like it would be okay, is we delayed Sue's Social Security until age 70. That's one, I get it. Not everybody wants to delay their Social Security. I'm just showing you all the different ways to save on taxes today. So we delayed Sue's Social Security until age 70. Again, that gave more time to get IRA withdrawals out at lower tax rates, and then the Social Security wasn't adding into the taxable income, making the tax rates go up. And then the last thing that we did was we implemented Roth conversions. In their situation, it projected out to implement Roth conversions up to the top of the 12% bracket today, which becomes the 15% bracket in the future. So if you remember where they had that dip in income, it was doing Roth conversions while they had that dip in income. What's a Roth conversion? It's shifting money from the IRA over to the Roth IRA. A very strategic thing. You want to make sure you discuss that with your tax professional as well as your financial professional, because you want to go up to certain tax brackets and not go over. And you only want to do Roth conversions if you're projecting your taxable income and tax rates will be higher in the future than where they're at today, like Jeff and Sue's sample case. So after implementing all of those different scenarios, what did their federal taxes project out to be? So on the right-hand side here, this is just what we implemented in the base scenario of their case, meaning switching over to the Roth 401k, doing the qualified charitable distributions, and delaying Sue's Social Security till age 70. You'll see that took I think it was $1.187 million in total federal taxes paid down to $1.097. So just those three things right there saved them about $100,000 in federal taxes throughout their projected lifetime. On the left-hand side then says, okay, on top of those three things, we then implement the Roth conversions. And as you can see, that projects out a lot of savings in regards to their specific scenario here. And again, all depends on what kind of market rates we get, what tax rates do in the future, what type of returns you get on the IRAs and 401ks and how they're invested. But in this case, doing those Roth conversions up to the 12 and 15% bracket then helped also reduce total federal taxes paid down to $837,000. So where they were at before, $1.187 million, now reducing those taxes down to $837,000. So for them, that's over $350,000 projected in federal taxes saved, not paid to the IRS. So back to our original story. Helping to lower your taxes and the taxes that you pay to the IRS, that's $350,000 saved, more in their pocket. Now you can potentially see how that could be more money to spend, more money to travel on, more money to pass on as a legacy, whatever you so choose to do with that savings. So if you're wondering how to reduce the taxes on your IRAs and 401ks, if you're wondering when you can retire, how much you can spend in retirement, are you putting the money into the right bucket? Should you be using the IRA, the 401k, the Roth IRA, the Roth 401k? Which one's right for you? Should you be doing qualified distributions? What about Roth conversions? And which bracket should you go up to? We can help you with all of that. You just go to lifemoneyshow.com and click on the Work With Us tab. I hope that you found this video to be of value and benefit, and if so, and you'd like to see additional videos on reducing the taxes on your IRAs and 401ks, on Social Security, and just other retirement topics, subscribe to our channel as we're coming out with videos on topics just like those each and every week. Thanks, and have a great day.